I welcome you all here. It's wonderful that you're all here, and I'm looking forward to a great morning. I am going to, first of all, thank very strongly Ms. Patricia Ray, Pat Ray, who is the Associate Director for Admissions at UPenn, the Graduate Division of Arts and Sciences, and I think we owe her a, yes. Pat has organized this entire event, the lovely hotel we're staying at, the delicious dinner, and everything we're doing this morning. I'd just like to make sure everyone knows, and I hope I don't miss everyone, starting in the north, we have representatives from Harvard, Brown, Columbia, NYU, Princeton, Penn, and University of Virginia. Did I miss anybody? Great. And then potentially, we also have viewing us from a remote location, the University of Chicago, Stanford University, and University of South Florida. So we have someone who is broadcasting our meeting live, so you can wave to... And before Pat officially starts the program, I'd like you to just know who is here who works with the Leadership Alliance at all our different member institutions. So if I'll start with David, can I start with you? Okay. So if you'd stand up and just your name and where you come from and what your job is. Okay.
My name is David Rainbow, and I'm the academic coordinator for the program at NYU.
I'm looking for someone who isn't. Isabel, I think you can start going around the table. Okay. And we have a special guest here. Yeah. Okay. And again, I'm Barbara Kahn, and I also work at Brown University. So I'm the coordinator for the Brown Summer Program. And I'm going to turn it over to Pat Ray now.
So welcome, everyone. I hope you had a good time last night and you were able to get a chance to see some of Philadelphia. And I am glad that you're here at Penn. And I'd like to start off the program with introducing our speakers who will be welcoming you to Penn as well. First up, we're going to have Dr. Valerie Swain Cade McCullum, who's the Vice Provost for University Life here at Penn. She's going to say a few words.
Good morning. I'm going to try this because I wrote my remarks. So there are going to be some pauses, but thank you for the invitation. I am absolutely delighted to welcome you all to the Leadership Alliance, Mellon Initiative, Humanities and Social Science Programs Visit Day at Penn. As a Philadelphia native, certainly, welcome to the birthplace of our nation. Also, on behalf of Penn President Amy Gutman and Provost Vince Price, welcome to the University of Pennsylvania, America's first university. Over 100 years ago, in 1896, an article, a short article, appeared in the New York Times. The heading was, First Colored Fellow Appointed. There were quotations around the name Fellow. Philadelphia, September 29th, 1896. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, colored, who was graduated from Harvard College several years ago and who studied in the German universities, has been appointed to a fellowship in sociology at the University of Pennsylvania. He is the first one of his race to hold such a position in this university. He will be an assistant to Dr. Samuel Lindsay in sociology. Dr. Du Bois will not be considered a member of the faculty and will not lecture at college. Dr. Du Bois brought a unique perspective to American scholarship. He charted Philadelphia neighborhoods and surveyed the population, investigating occupations, health, population statistics, the family, education, crime, religion, social life, and interracial relations. I determined to put science into sociology, Dr. Du Bois wrote at the time, and his persistence paid off. In 1899, Dr. William E. Burghardt Du Bois, who eventually was recognized as the first black faculty member at Penn, wrote The Philadelphia Negro, A Social Study, a seminal, brilliant volume. Contemporary distinguished sociologists, including Dr. Elijah Anderson, Dr. Dolores Aldridge, and Dr. Douglas Massey, have concluded that Dr. Du Bois's work in this study represented the first true example of American social scientific research. And because of the work of Dr. Du Bois and of those many faculty and administrative change agents who succeeded him over these many, many, many decades, a lot has changed here at Penn. In Penn's current action plan for faculty diversity and excellence, President Gutman and Provost Price proudly affirmed the impact and import of diversity at Penn. A great university, true to its name, must encompass a universe of backgrounds and experiences, ideas and ideologies, theories and perspectives. At Penn, we embody this diversity in our strategic vision, the Penn Compact, which seeks to increase access for talented and hardworking scholars of all backgrounds, to integrate knowledge across far-reaching areas of inquiry, and to engage with our multiplicity of local and global communities. Across 12 schools, more than 25,000 undergraduate, graduate, and professional students, and more than 4,000 distinguished faculty members, we become one university, a wide-ranging, ever-changing community that draws our strength from a multitude of races, ethnicities, genders, sexual orientations, historical traditions, ages, religions, disabilities, veteran status, disciplinary interests, perspectives, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Since 1992, the Leadership Alliance has been training, mentoring, and inspiring a core of outstanding young scholars and intergenerational role models, all of you, by providing excellent educational opportunities through its activities and initiatives. You are here today because of your superb academic acumen. You are the future scholars of global humanities and sciences disciplines. In a recent speech at Oxford University, Dr. Earl Lewis, president of the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, in a speech titled In Everyone's Interests, What It Means to Invest in the Humanities, said the following: "We have to consider that the humanities continue to demonstrate the vibrant and dynamic tension between continuity and change. We fully expect in the coming years announcements will be made in newspapers, including the New York Times, about each of you in this room today. The announcements will tell, after you have all received your PhDs, some of you PhDs, MDs that Arnaldo's working with distinction, of your various fellowship and faculty appointments, and of your numerous coming prestigious research awards. You will be considered eminent members of your faculties, and you will lecture at your colleges and many others around the world. Many of you will run multinational research institutes, and you will serve as presidents, CEOs, vice provosts, and deans. You will demonstrate the vibrant and dynamic tension between continuity and change. For now, we hope that you will consider Penn as the next venue to fuel your academic prowess. But no matter where you go next, we honor you, we salute you, we respect you, and welcome to Penn. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cade. Next, I'd like to just have a couple brief words from my boss, Dr. Eve Trappell. So be nice to her.
She's actually bossing me around today. Anyway, I think I would also just like to thank Val for such a lovely introduction. That was beautiful. I really appreciate it. And there is I'm a scholar of Middle Eastern history, and there is an expression in Egypt. You can't hear it? Oh, so before I start lecturing to you in Arabic, let me turn this on. It's on? Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you. All right. More? Stand up. Yeah. I'm the boss.
That'd be nice.
I know. There is an expression in Arabic, in Egyptian Arabic, إحنا منورين بوجودك, and that means we are illuminated by your presence and your words. So I want to say again, Val brought us into an intellectual history, a historical and intellectual relationship of scholars and of minority scholars and underrepresented people in scholarship. And so I just want to thank her again and welcome you again in my role as Associate Dean of Graduate Education in the School of Arts and Sciences at the University of Pennsylvania, about the importance of this fellowship, about how those of us who are already in academia reach back to those who help push us. We didn't get here by ourselves. I certainly didn't get this job by myself. All of you know that there are people who are pushing you. We are representing the hands that are trying to reach and bring you up in here with us to join what we need to become a growing bodies in growing numbers of underrepresented minorities in academia. So I just want to say two things, basically. The first is, one of the sad things about this history is that this history often isn't known. So part of my job every year is to sit down with grad chairs and grad coordinators and talk about what can you do as part of the University of Pennsylvania's mandate, all right, to diversify its grad education. What can you do, Professor so-and-so, what can you do to bring about more underrepresented minorities into your programs? And Pat can tell you how many times people look at us with blank faces and say, oh, but they don't want to come. Look at me and say this. And oh, but they don't want to be in academia. And I said, well, let's look at the bases for your conclusions. They often don't have any, all right? They just haven't seen, or for some reason it's a lack of imagination. So part of our job is to push on that lack of imagination. All right, if you can't see us, turn your head a little bit, okay? If you can't see us, look back. If you can't see us, look forward, all right? So that's part of what we're hoping that your experience here will encourage you to think about. You know, you were part of, there needs to be some movement, some political movement, because our presence in this world is quite political as it is personal. So that's the sad part, that we have to fight against that invisibility. And we were just talking a minute ago, you're going to hear from Matt soon. Matt was an undergrad at my alma mater and a grad student at my alma mater, Harvard, in which some of the same issues that I experienced as an undergrad 450 years ago, he experienced 2 years, no, less than that, but anyway. So we have to fight against that. So that's the sad news, but the important news. But the other thing I want to talk to you about is what is lovely and glorious about being a scholar. And that's something that I hope you don't lose as we struggle in all of this, that there is something so magical about getting that idea, all right? Whether you find it in the lab, oh, these are all humanities and social sciences, talk about labs, all right, but anyway. But whether you find that, all right, in the lab or in the archive or reading a book, perhaps you're reading W.B. Du Bois, all right, and you hit upon something, I could write about this, and you get that moment, and you create that place, and it becomes your dissertation proposal, and it becomes the course you're going to teach, and it becomes the place that only you can go to, that you have created for yourself, your dream palace, all right, that you have created with your mind, which you will use to teach others and to bring others into this special world that we call academia. Welcome to the University of Pennsylvania. Have a lovely day exploring here. Some of you I already know, and I'll see you later on, and the rest of you enjoy, and I look forward to hearing what our graduate students have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we're going to get started on our panels. We have everybody here. We're missing one student from Penn, Camille, who got stuck in the United Airfare thing yesterday. So she wasn't going to be able to she isn't going to be back on campus in time. So, but I think we'll have a good conversation with the 4 students that we have here. So I'd like you guys to just introduce yourselves and what you're working on, what program you're in and what you're working on here at Penn. And then Matt, of course, what you're doing at Harvard. Okay?
Should I
Yeah.
use this?
Yeah, you can use that one.
Hi, everybody. I'm Isabel. I'm a rising 4th-year PhD student in political science here at Penn.
Chair.
Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel Fryer. I just completed my 3rd year in philosophy here at the University of Pennsylvania. I work at the intersection of race, philosophy, and law.
Hi, I'm Matthew Clare. I'm a 4th-year grad student in sociology at Harvard, and I consider myself a cultural sociologist, so I'm interested in meaning making and how that influences people's behavior.
Hey everyone, my name is Eziaku Wokocha. I'm a rising 3rd year, and my work briefly is ethnographic research that deals with gender, sexuality, and spirit possession in Haitian Vodou. So if you guys, who knows about Haitian religion? All right, so we could be talking afterwards, but that's what my work looks at.
Okay, thank you all for participating and agreeing to be on the panel. I really appreciate that. So Renita is going to moderate the panel, and we're just going to open it up for discussion. We're going to talk about interdisciplinary study and joint programs and teaching, as you see on your agenda, small institution versus large research institutions. So, okay? And I hope you all participate and ask good questions and give these guys a run for their money.
Thanks, Pat. Hi, everyone. Thank you guys again for participating on the panel. This is going to be a fairly informal panel. We really want you guys to ask lots of questions. We will open it up to our administrators from the different universities at the back of the room who also want to offer insights on these different topics that we're going to talk about. We are going to start with this discussion about interdisciplinary study. And so if each of you could just have a conversation about, the different disciplines that you are in study, you are a scholar in, and as well as how those programs sort of run at your university. So we can start right here on the end.
Sure. So I'm in political science, which means that I'm working in one discipline, but my actual research is quite interdisciplinary. So I'm interested in the political development of social policy, which involves sociology, economics, social work, health studies, kind of everything is really thrown in there. So I've had a very good experience so far working from political science, but also in an area that's quite interdisciplinary. And the way that I usually manage that is by attending conferences in my area with lots of other scholars, making sure that I'm connected to other disciplines and other programs here at the university, and collaborating as much as possible with other researchers. So for example, Here at Penn, we have the Leonard Davis Institute of Health Economics, which is an interdisciplinary center for health research. And it's a lot of economists, a lot of social scientists, but what's cool about it is that it also involves folks from the nursing school, from the medical school. We have legal scholars there. And together we collaborate on workshops and projects and all sorts of things. So it's, you know, a great opportunity and one of many, I think, here at Penn that we have for scholars from a variety of different disciplines to come together and work on something. So that's kind of another home for me here.
I too have interdisciplinary research. I think you're probably going to hear that from everyone, particularly at Penn, because this is one of the institutions that really sort of a big advocate for interdisciplinary research. So a lot of people, while they're housed in one department, often study in various departments or take courses in other departments. Me particular, I'm a graduate student now in philosophy, but my undergraduate degree was in criminal justice. Then I did a master's at London in philosophy. Then I switched over to a PhD program in philosophy, and starting in the fall, I'll be in law school as well. So, I am, and I'm not getting these degrees just to get the degrees, right? I really think this is all essential to my research, to have this sort of background knowledge of various aspects. And I do think I take interdisciplinary studies very serious, and I think everyone should. I think just because you are housed in a particular department, you shouldn't feel that you aren't able to have conversations with your colleagues in political science or your colleagues in Africana studies or religion. It's like we all are after the pursuit of knowledge, and I think having tools from various disciplines would put you in a better position to be able to get closer to achieving knowledge. So I am a huge advocate of interdisciplinary research, interdisciplinary study, and that's manifested through my sort of pursuit of these various degrees.
So I'll speak a little bit about Harvard and then about myself. So in the social sciences at Harvard, there's something called a social policy degree. So basically you can be in your major discipline and then also apply to the social policy program. So there's sociology and social policy, there's economics and social policy, and government and social policy. And so it's this sort of institutionalized interdisciplinary moment where I think your first 2 years of grad school, you're with other people outside of your discipline. And they have a seminar every Monday. I'm not part of that program, but you can apply to that even after you get in. So you can apply to that program, or you can apply to that after you've gotten into your discipline. My own research is also interdisciplinary. I study several things that are of interest to me. So I guess I'm a little bit in cultural studies, which is such a broad sort of interdisciplinary entity as a cultural system. Also, my content area is very much within the criminal justice system, so I'm often interacting with professors at the law school, also people at the Kennedy School of Government. There's a program in criminal justice there. A lot of the interdisciplinary work, I don't know if you all agree with this, but sometimes that comes from also trying to figure out how you're going to get funding to do your research. And so sort of making yourself palatable to different audiences is something that's helpful in order to get research, so instrumentally, but also helpful in order to, these social sciences, the divides between them really are sort of boundaries that are sort of symbolic more than anything else. So I found that being able to sort of traverse these things as I look for grants has also been helpful to make my research more applicable to other disciplines.
All right. So being in Africana studies, already you could think of Africana studies being interdisciplinary as its own branch. But I came in as Africana studies PhD, and I'm now joint with religion. And so this is what happens. Like you come in going, I'm gonna do one thing, and then it actually can spread out to be multiple different things that can happen. But prior to that, my undergraduate degree, and speaking of what Daniel was saying, my undergraduate degree was in Black Studies and Feminist Studies. So I basically double majored in myself. And my master's was actually in Harvard at the Div School, the Divinity School. So from the crux, like each of my degrees have been a part of how I see my work and my research. Because again, when you're dealing with gender and sexuality, and when you're dealing with religious studies, and also Black women, I think all those disciplines and also those sites become very cool avenues in which you can engage in different researches, and also they also can be a broader aspect of how you can see your work. And so I think that what is cool about Penn is the fact that each department or each discipline has a lot of classes and coursework that I can take, and I have never been unsatisfied by the courses I've taken in this department, in this school. And so that's a good thing, because as you guys know in undergrad, you're like, oh my God, why am I here? But that has not happened yet. So, and I think that's a really cool thing, because you're within each coursework, I'm actually pulling from my work and actually looking at it through a different lens and through different avenues, which actually enriches my work. And then when I go to conferences like the American Academy of Religion, I'm able to pull from different aspects. So this is the strength. So as we all have been talking about, interdisciplinary studies has been a strength, not a weakness. And when you get into the job market, you're pulling from, you could be having multiple conversations with multiple people. So I think that's a cool thing too.
Thank you guys very much. I think just in sum, they did a very good job explaining sort of like the importance of integrating various disciplines into your scholarship. And one of the things that I noted just in looking at different scholars that whose work really sort of influenced my own work, they were able to pull from different disciplines and different approaches. So the way that economists approach these empirical questions, you know, we pull that in as political scientists. And then it's like, oh, you have come up with this novel approach. Actually, no, the economists did it, but I just applied it to political science, and it sort of makes this huge contribution to the discipline. And so when you're able to do that, it's a wonderful skill, but it also makes great contributions to your own discipline. So I think we can see how it makes your work interesting. It also allows you to make these great contributions. So thank you very much. I want to open it up to questions to our audience so we can sort of drill down to the specifics of how, what questions you have about these interdisciplinary approaches to your own work, or just, you know, curiosity on these types of things. And I'll run around with the microphone. Okay.
Hello, my name is Adeza, and I'm studying at Brown this summer in sociology. And this is a question for any of the panelists, but I was curious if any of you all took a gap year, and how, if you did take a gap year or gap years, how that informed what you later did your PhD work in.
Great question.
Anyone?
Well, I did not take a gap year. So, and everyone can speak to their experience, but I went from my master's, undergrad. That was so cool. I went for my master's first. And from undergrad to master's to my PhD. I cannot even lie to you, there was a moment where I did burn out because I was transitioning. I went from California to Boston, then to Philly. So if anyone knows who has moved a lot, that is an expensive and draining task to do. But nevertheless, I think for me, I was able to travel through, and it's the way, we're thinking about, when you think about scholarship, I'm a scholar athlete, I rode, so I'm always thinking about how can I use my time and manage my time well. So in those years, I was able to travel, I was able to take breaks when breaks were needed. And I was able to do a lot. My research has grown over the years because I was also working through my master's and my undergrad. And also I coach on the side. But I think for me, the gap, having the gap was also, not having a gap was also helpful for me because I needed to just keep moving. And I didn't want to stop as well,
So I took not only one, but 3 gap years. And I think academia is a very particular thing. And getting a PhD is a particular thing, and then becoming an academic is a distinct thing that you don't have to do after you get a PhD, but it's also a particular thing. And I think those 3 years allowed me to know what it was I was going to get myself into, and then commit to it and decide that this is the right thing for me. So real quick, I applied to law school my senior year. I also applied to Teach for America. I got into law school, but I also got into Teach for America, so then I deferred law school to do Teach for America for 2 years in Atlanta. And during that process, I realized what I could handle in my life on a daily basis and what I couldn't handle in my life on a daily basis. And so after my 2 years of Teach for America, I thought I would be a writer. I said, I'm not going to go to law school. Like, I need this sort of flexible life where I can create and have ideas and engage with the world. And so that may or may not have been something. My mom was really interested in me spending a year in her house in Nashville, living with her. So I randomly was able to get a job at NYU Business School, working with the dean there as his research assistant in economics. And he really encouraged me to think about academia as a path, because it enabled me to think about ideas, but also gave me structure and gave me an actual income that was guaranteed as well. And so that's when I applied to grad school, and I've decided this is the right thing for me. There are people who are in my grad school department who maybe that's not the best thing for them, because maybe they went straight through and didn't get a chance to sort of explore and think about other ideas and explore other the daily life of other jobs. So I would really encourage taking at least a gap year.
Yeah, so I didn't take a gap year per se. I had a bit of a break in between my master's program and this coming here at Penn. So I went from undergrad to my master's program, but it was in London, so it was about a 15-month program. So I ended up concluding the program at about December of the year prior to I started. So December 2011, then I started the PhD program in August 2012. So I had about eight months, so like 2/3 of a gap year. And I was a bit hesitant to speak about what I did, because I just stood around London and went to the Olympics with there that year. So that's why I was quick to punt the question to everyone else, because I was like, well, if you get a chance to do that, but I had a lucky opportunity because things just worked out. But I also spent a lot of time with my family in New York. So I do think if you do have that time, you should spend it, if you could, spend a bit of it with your family, because if you're going to a PhD program, you may be going anywhere, right? So at that point in time, I didn't know where I was going to end up for a PhD program, and it was, well, I'm going to spend the next 5, 6, 7 years of my life somewhere else. And during undergrad, I was actually close to home. I'm from New York, so I went to school in New York, so I was close to home and was used to being with my family on the weekend. So once I had that time where it was like, I don't know where I'm going to end up. I could end up on the West Coast. I could end up in another country. So I used that sort of, a bit of that time when I wasn't at the Olympics. I used a bit of that time to spend with my family, because I knew I was about to make a big move, and I wasn't sure how long or how much time I was going to have to spend with them over the next 5, 6, 7 years, and how often I would be able to go home. Luckily, I ended up pretty close, but I didn't know that, and I was willing to go almost anywhere. So.
Thank you. I don't want to cut off the discussion, but I do want to make sure that we get to as many questions on this topic as possible, and then we'll move into our other topics. So you'll be first up on the next question. I think we had a question back here. Yes.
Hey, my name is Kerwin Holmes Jr. I go to Morehouse in Atlanta, studying history and religion. You guys talked a lot about interdisciplinary education, but I'm really just curious, do you think that the graduate level education is a little bit too specialized to begin with? A little bit too narrow, that kind of forces graduate students to become interdisciplinary, just for the sole purpose of, like one panelist said, increasing the knowledge?
Great question.
So, yes, if you could go ahead and jump in there.
So that's a great question, and one that comes up often in graduate education for sure, and in sort of discussions about what the university is these days. I think there is certainly a risk of over-specialization, but you have a lot of agency here, and you can prevent yourself from becoming an expert in one thing and one thing alone. I mean, part of our job as scholars is to know a lot about a lot of things, and maybe our training isn't always helping us get there, but we can help ourselves get there. And a big part of this process is self-directed. So, for example, in my case, I certainly, what I'm doing is quite specific. I'm studying the political development of mental health policy in a couple countries. I find myself often looking at very obscure pieces of information, but I am in a great books reading group. which meets every couple weeks, and we talk about the classics. I have friends from all kinds of departments, and when we get together, we're talking about all kinds of things. I read widely popular press and academic press. So I think it's kind of on you to ensure that you kind of go beyond your specialization.
Great. I'm going to move on from this topic because I feel like the next two topics that we have will have quite a bit of conversation and discussion around. But I also wanted to also sort of follow up with this particular question because I think having this broad general view of the discipline and the actual discipline that you're in is really important. And I also think that the specialization is also important. And this is just a random example. We were here yesterday at the Mutter Museum, and it's a museum of like medical oddities. And there was this example of I think someone whose muscle turned into bone, and I can't fibrosia, I can't remember the name of what it was called. But anyway, there's this one doctor here that actually is here at Penn, and he is the one specialist in the world that sees all of these patients. And so for me, that question sort of points to like having a specialization is really important because in those instances for those 800 patients in the world that really need someone that is an expert in that specific area is really important. And when you think about the news and you think about who do they go to? They go to the experts in those areas. And so it's important to have that broad sort of breadth and depth of knowledge. But those specializations are what make you who you are as a scholar. You know, those are your interests. Those are the passions that drive you. So I don't think it's sort of like this zero sum, you know, in terms of this work that you have an opportunity to do. Okay. So we are going to move on to the discussion on small institutions versus large research institutions. And I think this is a question that often comes up for graduate students particularly. You probably are grappling with some of these decisions as you are to the final years of your program. Where do I fit? Where do I belong? What do these institutions look like? We also want to engage the administrators. Some of them mostly are at these research institutions, but some of them have experience in either their undergraduate degrees, being a student, or working in these other types of institutions. So we also want to sort of get their insight on these things as well. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to our panel. And the question that I would ask is, what do you see are the differences between these teaching institutions versus large research institutions? And one step further, where do you see yourself fitting and why?
Okay, I can start. All right. Okay, so the differences. I think and I guess these are running off stereotypes because I guess we all only have an N of one, right? I guess, anyway. So the differences would be that liberal arts colleges, if you go there to teach as a professor, it's teaching, right? Mostly is your main thing, rather than research, not as much funding and budget for research or much incentive to focus on research. Whereas at a research institution, teaching is almost not a thing. In fact, if you look like you're doing too much teaching, that's going to come up on when you're up for tenure. Why are you so focused on teaching? Why do you have so many teaching awards? Are you not doing research? So I guess those are the stereotypes. I see myself more at a large research institution, just because I got into academia mostly to explore ideas that I'm interested in and hopefully find policy solutions to the problems that I see in the social world. At the same time, I see the importance, looking in this room, I see the importance of teaching and making sure that students are engaged because so much of the social world is based upon individuals who, at the aggregate, make decisions. And it would be great if we could teach individuals in a way that you see the world and hope to change their minds in a certain way. But I think that I would be able to, in small seminars at research institutions at the undergraduate level, but then also at large research institutions, you have grad students who you can sort of mold to. So.
Yeah, so I agree, and I mean, I also accept that we are almost answering this question blindly because we don't really know. I mean, when we look for jobs, we'll take whatever we can get if we could only get one at a teaching institution. I know I want to be at a research institution, but if that's all that presents itself, then one would have to take that, even if it's just a stepping stone to a better opportunity later on. But with myself, I think, so with me, given that I'm going to also be pursuing a law degree, the question may be whether I end up want to be in an institution, in a law school, teach at a law school, or in a research or teaching institution. So the opportunities is probably going to be broadened, and I haven't really quite wrestled with that question yet. I think there's value in all of these institutions. The general idea is that teaching institutions or smaller colleges are more teaching focused. I think one difference that's crucial that I understand based on my undergrad experience was that there aren't graduate students around at these smaller colleges or teaching institutions, and I think graduate students have value. Big surprise, right? A graduate student telling you that graduate students have value, but I do think there's something about being at an institution where you have these graduate students who are doing new research and actually constantly up and being on track of the current research and what's coming out in journals. So I do think that's the value of the research institution that often isn't present at the teaching institution, but I think both of them have their virtues, and I would probably be happy at any institution.
So before we move on to this, to the last comment, just in general, small liberal arts institutions are institutions like Morehouse, Spelman, Wellesley, Swarthmore, Bates College. Typically, they do not offer PhDs. And research institutions are, of course, Harvard, University of Michigan, Penn, many of the universities that are a part of the LAMI consortium. So I didn't really understand what a liberal arts institution was until I got into my PhD program. And I was like, what is that, And many of the schools are very small. So you have, and typically they are many of them are on the East Coast, and I'm a Southerner, so hadn't heard a lot about those. So I just wanted to put that out there real quick. All right.
Yeah, one last comment on this, maybe second to last.
Yeah.
I, too, don't really know where I'll end up. I should note, though, and one should be self-aware about the fact that if you go into a PhD program at a prominent university, you will be encouraged and expected to go into a research institution. So if you yourself aren't sure if you want to do that, if say you're getting a PhD because you really want to teach in higher education, just be self-aware about that. And again, agency is really important here. Make it your own program. I have several friends in my department who their professors are sort of expecting them to go into a research institution after this, but they don't want that for themselves. And so what they're doing is they're gaining experience teaching a summer class at Swarthmore, for example. They are winning all the teaching awards because they rock at teaching. And that's very much the track that they're going for. Importantly, also, they are going to be far more competitive for the liberal arts jobs than, say, the rest of us will, because at this point they have incorporated that into their training. And the liberal arts schools really are looking for something else. They're looking for excellent, excellent teachers that can teach at the higher level. So if that's something that you're interested in, certainly explore it and just kind of be aware that it's on you to pursue that, because the institution that you'll be at is most likely going to encourage you to end up at an institution like itself. It's this sort of like self-reinforcing process, right? The professors that you're working under kind of expect you to be just like them when you grow up, and maybe you don't want to be like them.
So I want to attack this question from the administrator side. I'm going to come back to you and see if they have anything to offer up on this discussion. I've already warned them that I was going to be tapping them. I'm going to start with Justine.
Do I have to stand up? Sure, yeah. Oh, okay. I'll stand up. Okay, hello. Just a bit about my background. I did go to Swarthmore, right outside of Philly, and I just finished my PhD at Princeton. So I started at a small liberal arts institution, and I graduated from, a fairly intense research institution for my PhD. And I will say that there's not much that you guys at this point can do about determining whether you want to be at one institution or the other. What you can do, however, is look at the institutions that you'll be applying for your PhD and get a bit more information about teaching. And so at Princeton, especially my department, which was history, we didn't have a requirement. Teaching was basically optional. And so if you're going into an institution where it's not as big of a facet of your graduate education, then that will kind of determine the types of jobs that you'll be applying for once you get on the job market. So if you are getting a PhD at Brown or Harvard or Princeton, and you're looking to go to a research institution to teach, then you won't have to focus as much on getting that experience when you're doing your PhD. However, if you are looking to go to an institution like Amherst or Williams or Swarthmore, then that's going to be an aspect of your experience that you will have to focus a bit more on. So those are ways that you can start to think about that now without actually figuring out, well, what kind of institution do I want to go to in 6 or 7 years when I'm actually on the job market. Hopefully that helps.
I'm going to open it up to the students here. I think we had a question over here.
Hi, so I guess this can be directed to whoever wants to answer this question. I'm currently at a liberal arts college in McAllister in the Midwest, and I very much value the mentorship I'm getting right now, and it's what's sort of like driving me to get the PhD. And that one-on-one mentorship, I think that at my institution specifically, there is a lot of research still going on. And a lot of my professors have NSF grants and all these things to continue their research. So I'm wondering if like striking a balance in graduate school between teaching experience and also the research that I really value is a good thing to do in order to have like that flexibility in the job market.
Yeah. What's your name? Christopher. I like you. I mean, on a lot of points I wanted to tap on too. It's not saying the liberal arts schools, because I was thinking about Swarthmore and Wesleyan. One of the professors I know at Wesleyan is Gina Ulysse Grant. And she is doing phenomenal work on Haitian studies and women in Haitian diaspora, and she's probably the main person I'm quoting from, and also drawing from my work. So it really, you guys have to understand that it is the university and the PhD program. It is what you make of it. Again, I played a sport. I coach and I rode in college. So I'm coming at it as a scholar athlete. You have to, when you go out into the field or when you go out into the court or whatever, you have to see all the opportunities and all the people that can be on your side, and think of it as like as a team. So the mentorship that you were talking about is so key, and it might not. And when you go to grad school, it might not necessarily be from your faculty mentor. And this is, again, that's what I'm talking about. This is where you need to be posing a team. So your faculty mentor might be the one that's driving, like where you're going, your courses are fine, and maybe about your job. But then you're also gonna have like other people on your that is advising you, and that's part of your faculty mentor group. Is being more of that mentorship that you need. So for me, I know that I need someone that's gonna show me where the end goal is, but I also need someone that's gonna be with me once a week, that we can sit down and bounce out ideas. And if that's the type of person that you are, or other people, then you definitely need to go seek that out. And again, when we think about teaching versus and research, again, for a Penn, we are required to be a TA or even teach 2 times, or 4 times, or basically in our 2nd and 3rd year. So in Penn's institution, it is critical for us to have a teaching, to be part of like the TA and mentorship and teaching role. So again, if that's not part of the institution, then you have to go and put yourself out there to like say, you know, this is critical for me. And again, because of the job market, we do not know where we're going. So it is important that you, again, and think about it as an interdisciplinary approach, that you have to be the jack of all trades. And for me, as a woman of color, I need to know how to double dutch. Whatever you need, I can do, you know, because I want to make sure that I'm strong in all aspects of my work, but then also I can be malleable to in any situation. So, yeah.
Real quick, just to add something. So thinking of yourself as a grad student going in, so Bell Hooks talks about like dualities and dialectics that are so like ingrained in academia and you know teaching versus research, mind versus body. I think your goal is to be the best at everything that you're doing. That's number one. Obviously, that's not going to happen. So then you have to think, all right, you know, if I can't be the best teacher, get all the best teaching awards, and be the best researcher, and like have every faculty member love me, you have to make a list of what's most important, right? And so I think because I want to be at an R1, what's most important would be research first, then teaching, right? And yeah, I want to be the best teacher, but at the end of the day, I've got to say, this day I only have 3 hours to make my lesson plan. This next day I only have 2 hours to grade these papers. That's all I've got. I've got to do the best I can. And so in sociology we call it satisficing. It's basically like, you know, kind of like getting through it.
I like that.
Yeah, so.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, I just wanted to like see if you guys could talk more in depth or get more specific about like friends that you might have who have gotten really good teaching experience, because it's not often that we hear good things about like teaching like in like academia. It's also like you don't want to go to programs that are going to make you teach, and you want to be able to have the time that you want. And so I know that you guys are like joking about like those teaching awards, but I really like wanted to know if you could just talk about like other ways that if you're interested in like teaching in like academia, like how that can be developed and like seriously like pursued like as a grad student.
So great question. Most institutions that I know of have a center which is just focuses on pedagogy. So here at Penn, it's the Center for Teaching and Learning. And they're a tremendous resource. They offer a lot of training. They offer a lot of additional opportunities. I, for example, have gotten the certificate in teaching from them, which involves like an observation and a teaching statement. It's a whole process. But it's great. It's like I'm getting a little bit of training in pedagogy, which is excellent. Some of my friends who I mentioned earlier, who really want to pursue a teaching-heavy career and know that that's what they want to do, they have actually gone out of their way to teach some of their own courses, both at Penn and also at other institutions. I marvel at their ability to do this because it's demanding, and they manage to do that and do all of their research at the same time. I think they're pretty strategic about it. They usually teach in the summertime, maybe when they know they don't have to do quite the same kind of work that they would need to do during the school year, but they miraculously make it work. So I have a friend who's taught at like Bryn Mawr and Villanova, and he taught a class at Drexel, and he taught his own class here. So those opportunities exist. Again, if you seek them out, and certainly use the resources of the institution, like the pedagogical centers which exist.
I want to also touch on that question because I think it's a great question. And sometimes institutionally there are these sort of stereotypes around teaching, or these mechanisms that would sort of inhibit you taking on teaching, and it's sort of frowned upon in some institutions. But I would say, like, you have to know sort of who you are and what you value. And I think partially part of the PhD process allows for that, for developing as an individual. So you get to find out those things that you're really interested in doing. So for me, I would say, my first experience in the classroom, I knew that I liked teaching, but I didn't know how much. And so what I knew I had to do was sort of seek out those opportunities. And so it just so happens that an opportunity came up. One of our professors left, and so the class was open, and I went to the chair and said, I really would like to teach this class. And so they were like, sure, go ahead and do it. And that teaching experience really sort of fueled this fire in me to want to teach that I didn't really know was there at the level that it was. And just so happens, what it did was, so that class was sort of honored as one of the best classes at my institution that year. And from that, it was like, oh, she's a really great teacher. So then you sort of are noted for the things that you value. So that's one of the things that's really sort of encouraging, when it's like, oh, you're good at something, and then other people actually notice that you're good at it. So then that sort of informs other things and allows you to sort of follow the path that you're meant to follow. So your PhD experience is one where you have to take ownership for yourself of the things that you value. And at the end of the day, you have to realize that what you decide to do, regardless of what the expectations are on your own, from your advisors, from your mentors, is your life, and you have to live it. And so you have to always sort of keep that in the back of your mind while you're doing your research and doing your teaching. I'm going to go right here.
Hi, my name is Tian Jan. I'm an undergraduate at University of Chicago, but I'm doing my summer program at Penn. I'm a sociology major. And my question was related to your all's experiences or expectations for the job market when you guys enter the market later on. So I know you guys mentioned a lot about how research institutions might be preferable, at least for people who get their PhDs at research institutions, but that, when you go on the job market, not everyone has the option of, choosing between a research institution or a liberal arts institution. So I kind of just wanted to know, so what, in your experiences, has been kind of the option for most people who are in your cohorts or in your programs? Are people usually have the option of getting a tenure track job at the kind of research-oriented institution of their choice, or are most people going to postdocs, leaving academia? That's the question. Thanks.
Good question. So a couple things. Just in terms of what I do, I don't worry too much about the job market. I really just focus on the things that I'm passionate about, with that expectation that, well, if I do something that I'm really passionate about, it's going to be good, right? So at least at this point, maybe in a year or two as I get closer, I will be more concerned. But at this point, I really, and this has been the sort of advice of many of my mentors, just, do what you're passionate about and just do good work. Everything else is going to fall into place. For some people, they would say that's a naive point, but that's just how I approach it. And the options that have been available from people in my program have been both research institutions as well as teaching colleges. When you're at an institution like Penn or Chicago or other of these various institutions, they have this sort of reputation. So even if you don't have a lot of teaching experiences, some of the smaller colleges in the area will just take a chance with you just because you have a Penn degree. So and this has been, the people that have gotten jobs at these places, of course they've been great, but I would probably be misleading to say that institutional reputation doesn't really carry some sort of weight when you're going on the job market. But I also wanted to just quickly say something to the previous point, because he said something about, I know you guys were joking about teaching awards, and I don't want it to be misleading as if, we were joking about your colleague getting the teaching award. I think, that's an accolade or an accomplishment that anyone would be happy to achieve. So I think the joke was more or less that she had to go out of her way to make herself appealing to these sort of universities that value teaching, where people at other institutions don't have to do too much. And that goes to your point where it's like people are telling you, don't go to a institution where you have to teach too much. I think the main reason they may be telling you that is just because they want you to finish. The thing is that our time is limited, and with everything there's trade-offs. So the idea is that if you go to an institution where you have to teach multiple classes every semester, when are you going to write? When are you going to complete your dissertation? So one of the luxuries that you get when you go to institutions such as Penn or other highly ranked research institutions that you get a lot of support to spend towards doing your research and completing your dissertation. Whereas if you're going to mostly state schools or other colleges that aren't highly ranked research institutions, you'll have to teach more. And as everyone says, well, that just takes back on the time that you actually get to teach. But these things aren't mutually exclusive, right? It's not the case that you can't be a great researcher and a great teacher. I think you just have to, again, at some point you're gonna have to prioritize and see what you want to put forward first and see as, the most important thing for you to do right now. But I think you could do both, and I'll just say that.
I just want to give a really quick sense of sociology. So in the sociology department, I think this is economics, political science. There are a lot of people who go into the public sector, who go into the private sector, so public policy, private sector, Mathematica, things like that. Also, there are people who work at business schools, right, or law schools instead of just like in their sociology departments. And then there are a bunch of people who, not a bunch, but a significant minority that get just the master's and take the master's and then move on and decide they're not going to finish the PhD.
Hi, I'm Christopher Prasad. I'm doing research at Harvard this summer in sociology, and I go to Temple University in Philly. So we're doing a lot of talking about kind of like living your values and embodying like whatever you believe in terms of like your direction and your PhD and like et cetera. But I was wondering, like, so I do a lot of teaching as a peer teacher in undergrad because that's something I really enjoy, and I do community work. And is that something I should talk about in my applications to graduate school, or would teaching as an interest of mine, even though I feel that it informs the questions that I want to research and talk about? So like, do you think that it would hurt me to talk about, oh, like I do this community work and like this has really informed what I'm interested in, or should I say I'm interested in this because of X? As like, how should I frame that, I guess? Or like broadly, like how should anyone who has interest in teaching frame that teaching is something that they think is integral to the work that they would want to do?
I think you just said it. Like, basically, most of the time, it's like your research informs your teaching, because you can't get up there and teach something that you have no idea about. And so to be able to reflect that in your graduate school application, to be able to say, I'm really passionate and fueled by X, and I hope to bring that to shine a light on that in the classroom. I'm really excited about exploring this area. So, of course, you are entering into a PhD program, the hope is, with the idea of exploring this research. And so to be able to integrate that is, what your application should reflect. So that would be my advice. Do y'all have anything to add to that?
What program are you thinking about?
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I think it depends on what the type of questions, because like they have different questions like, what do you plan to do for your research, or tell us about your background. So maybe that's part of the background. Like again, I came in as a quote unquote scholar athlete. So in the background, that's where I talked about like seeing like being a rower and being a Black Studies and Feminist Studies double major, and then thinking about fitness as this way of life and creating balance. That was background. But when it comes to the research, this is where you drive it in. Like, I was also a McNair scholar. This is where my work was going, and this is how it's going to be. And this is where I would like to do. Well, this is the work that I hope to do, and here's who I want to work with. I think that if you segment it in that way, you're able to talk about all the aspects of who you are. And again, for a place like Penn, it is we. We do want to see that. We like to see all aspects of you, because we know that you're not just going to be a scholar. There's other parts of you that we're interested in seeing. And again, when you go into the academic world, into this institution, you're going to be going to different sites. And so your strengths and all these different aspects of who you are will be shining in different parts. But we're here to see the research too. That's like the highlight part, the main point.
So maybe I'll make a couple things. So in the context of the admissions question and like writing your statement of purpose, it's really about the research, right? So unlike undergraduate, where there's a professional administrative and admissions committee that's reading your application and making the decisions, for the PhD, it's the departments it's faculty reading those statements and making decisions, right? And yep, you can put some of the personal stuff in there because it sort of weaves an interesting story. Yeah. But as was said, it's really about the research. Exactly. Because I want to know, I'm not looking at you as necessarily just this student that I'm going to teach. I'm looking at you as you're going to be my future colleague.
Exactly.
So that's what I want to know about you. I want to know what are those intellectual questions that you're interested in asking, what are those passions that you have that are those sort of intellectual scholarly pursuits, right? And I want to see the narrative and the very scholarly discussion of that in that statement of purpose. When you read the application instructions, it will seem like we want to hear a lot about your personal life and your background and your whole history. We don't, you know, because that's not going to tell me anything about you as a scholar and what your potential is and the kinds of questions that you're interested in. So you really want to be emphasizing that. That's going to be the majority of your statement. Going back to kind of the whole teaching and balancing the teaching research piece, teaching is important regardless, having an opportunity to be exposed to teaching is important regardless of what profession you're going to do. Whatever you do with that PhD, you've got to communicate, right? So teaching can be something you do because, yep, you want to go, whether it's be in a Research 1 or in a small liberal arts setting, so it gives you that exposure to that exact thing that you're going to be doing. But if you're going to go and, let's say, take that degree and go to Mathematica or go do policy, you've got to communicate with people. You've got to be able to relate your ideas. So teaching is also an opportunity to train yourself in that communication. So if if your school doesn't require it, still try and figure out how are you going to build that communication skill that's going to be critical for wherever you go. So it don't necessarily see it as a burden, see it as another part of your graduate education. And the other thing that I'll add in the context of this Research 1 versus small liberal arts setting, all Research 1s are not equal, all small liberal arts schools are not equal. They're all very different experiences. Harvard does not equal Princeton, does not equal University of Michigan, does not equal Berkeley, does not equal Cal State Fullerton. They're all very different experiences. And yes, you guys can't figure out right now, like, okay, what are all these different places like? But you are all at your individual schools. You have faculty members that you're close to. You can use that opportunity to sort of talk with them and say, hey, why did you decide to come here, right? What is your life as a faculty member like here? So you can start gathering that information, and then as you go on to your PhD, you're going to experience a different institution. Gather that information. If you do have opportunities to teach a course at a different school and taking advantage of that, you can gain that information and figure out what exactly is that institution that you want to be at. But remember that each one has its own characteristics. So just because you're at one R1, it doesn't mean every R1 is the same thing. You might not want to be at this kind of R1, but maybe you want to be at this kind of R1, or maybe not this kind of liberal arts college, but maybe this kind. So it's a complicated process, and what you guys need to do is just gather information. You're all at different summer programs right now in different institutions. Use this opportunity to gather that information and figure out, is this the kind of place that I want to be? Is this somewhere I want to be in the future? But so just take advantage of that and just keep kind of learning about not only the work that you're doing, but also those future opportunities that you might in those careers that you might want to be thinking about exploring.
Awesome. That was great. I think summed up all of the different elements for each of the topics that we have covered today. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to come back to this table. They have plenty of answers. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the next part of the program where we're going to talk about careers in academia. And I think you'll have lots and lots of great questions for that as well. So I'm going to turn it over. Thank you for being a captive audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Renita. Okay, so we're going to lose one of our panelists. She's got to leave, but thank you, Isabel, for helping out today.
Thank you for having me.
Yep.
My email is online, so feel free to ask me any questions, especially if you're interested in poli-sci programs. We can talk.
Okay, thank you. And so now we're going to have, we're going to talk about the career, what you can do with a PhD, and I have Anne-Marie Girk here, who's going to moderate for us, and our panel will be joining in on that. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. This is a topic that is close and dear to my heart because I help students every day who are in the career exploration path I like a lot of the themes that I've heard so far, especially about communication and that being key. But I have a quick question. Who here knows exactly what they want to be when they quote unquote grow up? Nobody, or maybe one in the back, okay. That's exactly how I felt too when I was going through my undergrad, and I just want everybody to know that's a totally normal feeling. It's also, you know, if you're thinking of pursuing a higher degree with a PhD, it's common to think the only thing that you can do is to go on to teach. That is the most common, but there's also a ton of other things that you can apply that degree to, so we can talk about that later. But I wanted to start by asking the panelists, just to start, you know, thinking back to when you were an undergrad, is there anything that you wish you knew then that you now know that you can offer our audience sort of as advice?
I didn't know anything. I was so naive, and I didn't have the opportunity to do a program like the Leadership Alliance or even McNair or Mellon. Like, I just went into this almost blindly, and I didn't have graduate students around. So, I mean, I didn't find out that not only did you not have to pay for a PhD, but you actually get a stipend until like I was applying. That was a huge difference. Like, once I found out, oh, I don't have to pay for 5 more years of school. Someone's going to pay me. That changed the game completely. So that was one of the things, which, I mean, I'm sure everyone here knows that, but I didn't find that out until like the end of my undergraduate career. So I'll just say I didn't know anything.
So advice to my former self. One is definitely get really engaged with faculty at this point. You think you can wait until grad school, but actually a lot of the academic game, if you will, is about knowing people and knowing their research and knowing their work. And, you know, making sure you afford people the right credit for their ideas, right? And so this starts at an early age, getting to know the scene, who's there, and just getting to interact with them because they have advice for you and they can be mentors who carry you throughout your career. So I did not really interact with faculty when I was an undergrad, and that was a major mistake, I think. Also, I think most of your, I guess, rising juniors, seniors definitely have to write a thesis. I think that's a given, because that will also be what's going to be in your packet for when you apply. I guess those are the main things that I wish I had known.
I'm like really hesitant to say this, but I think that this is very important. So again, as a McNair scholar, my faculty mentors and advisors were pushing me to go straight to a PhD. And so if I had to talk to my former self, I would have told myself that if you're unsure of whether the PhD route is great for you, but pretty sure all you guys are here, so you guys are considering PhDs. But 2, if you need more time for yourself, please consider a master's. So I know this can be some taboo for some people, but for me, I applied to 16 schools, and I got into two schools, and one was Harvard, and one was NYU. Idaho said no. I'm so mad. It's okay. It's okay. But Harvard said yes. But being at the div school prepared me so much for the type of, as well, you know, again, as an undergrad, that's fine. But when you're in the master stage, and also because I'm now in more religious studies, the type of reading and intellectual rigor that I was able to achieve in my master's has prepared me and launched me forward into my PhD program. And my reading capability and balance of doing, again, you know, you're doing undergrad work, but then you go into graduate work, I feel like I needed the time. And I think that was so important for me. I was kicking and screaming through that process. But now looking back at it, and also, again, being in the Ivy Leagues and being in an interdisciplinary program, the Divinity School, when you say you went to Harvard Divinity School, you're also in another network. So I was able to tap into that network unknowingly. So I think that was such a great thing for me. And again, this is not for everyone, because as you know, that my colleagues here went straight to their PhD, and that's fine. But I think for me, it really gave me the maturity that I needed to get to be, and as well as the intellectual rigor to push me forward. And that's why I'm able to, even some of my classes, my courses count, my master's courses count towards my PhD. So again, this is the type of things that you need to consider. And lastly, make sure you have a balance. And whatever the things that you do, what you love, especially going into this academic tenure, it is a marathon, not a race. It's not a sprint, okay? So if that is yoga, if that is playing the clarinet, if that is watching cartoons, I love SpongeBob, do it. Because you're gonna need that. You're gonna need to find that thing that you're able to turn on or turn off. Yeah, so I think that was the two things for me.
Thank you very much. I think we actually have some additions from this back table here.
So I'd just like to follow up from an administrator standpoint. So hi, I'm at Columbia. My name's Isabel. So listening to some of the comments about, you know, what you would tell your former self, we are all very pro taking as much time as you need, because it's not worthwhile to get into a graduate program if you do not take care of yourself, you have not done enough research. It's not going to behoove anybody if you just end up dropping out at some point. However, it's a very touchy subject thinking about going for a terminal master's degree in the sort of current economic and academic landscape, especially because everybody in this room is humanities and social sciences. Terminal masters, by and large, are not funded, okay? So one of the other things you need to be thinking about is sort of financial literacy. At this stage of your career. It's great, right? A PhD program, by and large, are fully funded. You will have tuition, you will have healthcare covered, you will get a stipend for between 5 and 6 years, depending on your institution. Master funded, which means you will have to come up with tuition, you will have to pay for healthcare, and you will have to be able to make enough money for you to live for 2 years, if not more. You do not want to take that kind of debt burden on, especially, you know, if we're also conversations about placement, right? So you don't know what the job landscape is going to look like by the time you finish a PhD, okay? So you want to be thinking strategically. Yes, a master's program might be good for some of you, but I wouldn't think about doing a master's as a placeholder. You would do a master's for something like if you're transitioning, right? So maybe, you know, for one of the gentlemen at the front who was coming from criminal justice and was transitioning into philosophy, right? You want to use a master's program strategically, right? So if you need to sort of become academically prepared in a field that was not your undergrad major. But don't do a master's just as, you know, oh, maybe I'm trying to sort of, you know, gauge the temperature. Don't use a master's. Taking time, right? You would maybe go work at a nonprofit for 1 or 2 years to sort of help you figure out what some of those larger research. Take the time to figure out what it is that you need as a person and as a scholar. One of the things that you're navigating and sort of negotiating at the quality of a program, right? You also need to be thinking about quality of life issues. Campus, do you want to not be at an urban campus? Do you want to be at a large institution or not? But you're also learning how to be an adult, okay? You know, things that are going to be changing in terms of your personal life. Some of you are going to get partners. Some of you are thinking about family planning. These are, I know some of you are like, whatever, I'm only 21. But, you know, grad school is job training, right? It's vocational training. So it's great to sort of buy into the romance of research. But one of the things you should be thinking about at this stage is, you know, some of those long-term horizon questions, right? Is this a place that I can live for 5 to 6 years? Will I be able to do this kind of work for 6, 7+ years if you're in the humanities? Because the average time to degree is closer to 7 or 8. You know, those are the kinds of things you need to think about. So definitely take the time, because it's not going to help you if you burn out. Right? It's not going to help you if you realize that this is just not the right fit. But be careful about master's programs.
Well,
sorry.
Can I just add that for my master's program, and I want to talk about the Harvard, because again, I went to Harvard Divinity School, my master's was actually fully funded, and I actually got a stipend as well as a scholarship my last year. So there are master's programs that actually do fully fund you. And again, it does depend on the master's program. So my master's was not terminal. It was a master's in theological studies. Whether if you did the master's in divinity school, that is actually more terminal. So there, and she is right that there are master's programs that or can be terminal, but for me, my master's was also a guidance way to lead to the PhD. That again, that actually made my application package much more stronger. And so again, yes, everyone's gonna have the different opinions, but again, for me and my work, and again, now having conversations that when I go to the American Academy of Religion and other Caribbean Studies Association, Haitian Studies Association, that the fact that I say I'm at Penn and the PhD, but also because I say I went to divinity school, that grounds me in a particular way that I was not able to do, would not have able to say or do if I didn't go through my route. So I really want to add that you can find master's programs that are fully funded. So.
All right, thank you all. I would just like to add too, I really agree that you do need to take some time for yourself and make sure that going down the route of academia is for you. It can be an investment. You can find the funded options like you mentioned, but right now what you know is school. You've been in school all your life. So it's easy to think, oh, you can be scared and you're graduating and what am I gonna do? I don't wanna go out to the real world. I'm just going to go to a master's program. I'm going to jump into a PhD program. You should really take some time to think for yourself. That is definitely right for many people. It can also be something that like was mentioned in the back, that you should take a couple of years working, maybe in a nonprofit, maybe at an NGO, working in research perhaps, and then going back to school later. So just a quick question: who here in the audience has ever used career services at your school? Oh, good. A few of you. Anybody on the panel by any chance? Have you been in? Okay, great. Career services is actually, I feel, an underused resource at most colleges. We have a lot of different resources that can really help you with your search, especially finding out what people who have done the route that you're thinking of taking before you, where they are now. So we do a lot of surveying. It's common at many colleges. And you can actually, it's almost a cheat sheet for your life, where you can find out what have other people who have gone down this route done, where are they now? And then there's tons of networking opportunities as well, where you can reach out and sort of find some mentors that can help guide you through the process. So I really, really encourage you to reach out to your own career services offices and that advisor that maybe can help lead you down whatever path you decide to take. Okay, next question for the panelists. And I apologize, I came in after the panel started, so I'm not sure if this question was already asked. But did you know exactly what you wanted to do with your degree when you decided to do it?
No. Which degree? At least coming into Penn here, I had an idea that I also knew I would pursue a law degree as well. So I knew I wanted to go into academia. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go into legal academia or academia as a philosophy professor. And I still don't know. But I agree that this is one of the things that grad school teaches you and helps you develop. And you start to learn and figure out what you want to do. And sometimes it's not just about what you want to do, but who you want to be. And this is something that grad school has given me the opportunity to learn. But I mean, we come here with an expectation that we want to pursue an academic career. That's often the reason why many people pursue a PhD program, and it's almost an expectation of you that you go into academia, and it's not an unwarranted expectation because as you learned, the institution puts a lot behind you, right? So they fund your program, they give you stipends, they give you insurance and so on. They are investing a lot into you, so you do have some sort of expectation and maybe some sort of requirement to do some good to society. But I think you should determine what that good is, and you start to learn that once you actually mature. And if you're in a 6, 7, 8 year program, you have no choice but to mature.
I think grad school is really a taste-making institution, and it's a professionalization that if you don't have a solid, strong impulse impulse of like, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it no matter what and I'm going to do it this way, you will be swept within that sort of impulse and you'll go the professionalization route that most people go. And so I guess that means in selecting the institution, you want to make sure it sort of aligns with what you think you know you want to do. I will say dreams have died while I've been in grad school. Like I definitely thought I could be a fiction writer on the side and also do research and maybe be, you know, someone who's like a profound lecturer. You know, maybe the fiction has definitely gone away. I can't do it. I just don't have time, you know, especially when I'm writing all the time. I can't spend other time writing in a different way. So I've actually, a new dream has emerged, which is I make visual, thank you. Thanks, guys. I make visual art on the side, so that's exciting. But yeah, like I think, you know, if I really, really wanted to become a fiction writer, this is really changes, but I've decided that, you know, it's okay. I have other interests that are more in line with what I'm being professionalized toward, and that's fine. You know, I can't do everything in my life.
Since I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted a PhD. I called myself Dr. Chocolate to my friends and my stuffed animal. So this was always been my dream. And I took those diagnostics tests, you know, when you were in like in, you know, 6th grade and they tell you, and it said I was gonna be a professor. So I was like, oh my goodness, they know me. You know, like my colleagues that don't know, I actually knew that I was going into teaching, but I'm also open. The way in which my path has taken me has been very windy, but I think that even though I'm like leaning to teaching, I'm open to the possibilities. Like if I'm going more towards administration, if I'm more going towards teaching or research one institutions. So I'm open to the possibilities, but I've always knew that at least I know I'm going to be a professor. That's like my minimum. So yeah, great.
What would you say is your biggest anxiety as well as your biggest excitement for when you complete your program?
Do I have a job? That's a big. So I have six brothers and sisters, and so coming from a Nigerian family background, like I could hear my mom going, "Eziako, what are you doing? Do you have a job? You need to get married, or so." Since I'm not taking that route, I think for me, making sure that I am still moving and have. I'm employed in some form of fashion. So I think seriously, that's like the biggest. I don't think for me, I don't want to be broke. So that's a big anxiety.
Same, big anxiety is the job. My hope and excitement is having a finished product of research. So I think my department really sort of encourages you to get papers out fairly quickly so that you can have some papers on the job market. So I've had some papers that are out, but they're co-authored, and so I can't wait to have my first real single-authored piece of scholarship out there.
Yeah, I'm worried about not having a lot of time. And seeing one of the things about being a PhD student, at least once you get to the dissertations stage, you have a good amount of time. You don't really have any teaching obligations. You don't have many other things that you have to do except for your research. And for me, that means I could do whatever I want. I could read a lot of things on the side, and I have a lot of time. So I do sort of fear that moment where I won't have this amount of time. I'm gonna always have to prepare for a next class or finish this paper, where at this stage in my career, it's like I have a decent amount of time, and time isn't something I don't too much. But so that's one of my biggest fears is once I finish, it's like I'm not gonna have this time because I'm gonna be having all these other obligations, and that may make me more specialized than all those other things that we spoke about earlier may happen when that's the case.
Excellent. I think they're all really good points. Just going off of the fear of not having a job after you finish these many, many years of hard work and then feeling like, well, now what? You know, I can't find a professor position, or, you know, I've just done all of this work and I feel like it's worthless because I'm not getting hired. Come to Career Services, we will help you. Come early though, don't wait until you've already finished. And you know, as I mentioned before, there's not just one path. There's a bajillion different paths that you could take, and you're not going to necessarily know about them unless you seek help. So it's not something you have to wait until you complete that degree, turn in your dissertation. You should be using our resources throughout the whole process just to make sure you're going down the path that's right for you. So I can't stress that enough. Our career services professionals, they're here to help you. We live for helping students. That's the whole reason we got into this field. So make sure you do tap into that, whether in your undergrad, as you're deciding what degree to pursue after, or what job to pursue after you finish either a master's program or a PhD program. I want to open it up. I feel like there's probably a lot of questions in the audience, so I just want to make sure that I include everybody. Is there anybody that has any burning questions for the panel right now about job search, career exploration? Okay, right back there.
Kerwin Holmes. I was just listening to the whole panel discussion. I actually had a question that's kind of essential. In scholarship, I know it was said earlier about the pursuit of knowledge and things of that nature. But I'm just really wondering what drives you for scholarship internally, like at the very core. Yeah. Like, is it a pursuit of truth? Or is it pursuit of knowledge for truth, or is it pursuit of knowledge just for knowledge's sake? Like to just connect the dots to make people more aware? Like what is the thing that really drives you? Because it seems to me like I'm gonna face a lot of hell anyways when I go to grad school. So I need to be able to have some sort of grounding, like you guys said. I'm just wondering, what is your grounding?
That's great. Yeah, really good question. Don't have as good of an answer, but what grounds me is just really, so a lot of people say, well, research is really just me search, right? So I'm really just trying to make sense of the world that I live in. As a philosopher, I get to deal with foundational questions like what is knowledge, what is, or a metaphysical question, what it means to be a human being. But often but then on the law side, I deal with the practical questions and the way that law and other political institutions govern people's lives. So when I sort of try to do my research, I'm often motivated by just trying to make sense of our society and all these sort of things that happen in it. You see the news and all the ways that people are treated, particularly black persons in America, and seeing that and having those experiences and having conversations with family members and hearing how they're actually treated when they're outside of these sort of walls, outside of these institutional walls. Those sort of things drive me at the core, as you speak, Kerwin. I think it's really just trying to make sense of the world that I live in. And as an academic, I think I have a lot of time to try to make sense of the world that I live in, time that a lot of people who a lot of my friends and family don't have this time because they have other 9-to-5 jobs and they don't really get a chance to think about the world 24 hours a day. So I feel I have an obligation to try to make sense of it and then sort of transfer my knowledge on to them and also gain knowledge from them. So I do think ultimately at the core of it, I'm really just driven. I'm really just motivated by the sort of things that happen in this world and taking the opportunity to try to make sense of it.
So I think this question of motivation is really, really important and something that your advisors will tell you matters a lot, especially when you get in the dissertation phase and you are just slogging through stuff for years by yourself often. If you're not passionate about it for some really deep motivation, then that's usually where a lot of people end up not continuing. So this is a really important thing to think about. My two drivers are, one's epistemological and one is sort of policy and what bothers me about the world. So luckily, my methods are ethnographic, in-depth interview. I like observing people, watching them, talking to them, hanging out with them. So that's perfect. I just like that aspect of what I get to do every day. And then, so the content of what I do, which is about the criminal justice system, I was going to a Trayvon Martin rally in Dudley Station 2 years ago. And that's sort of what was frustrating me at the time. And that's what sort of drove me to wanting to talk to judges, prosecutors, and public defenders about everything about how they deal with the criminal process, but in particular about the social problem of racial disparities in the criminal justice system.
That is such a profound question. I think for me, I just have this antidote about my mom. As you guys heard, I've talked about my mom a lot, but when I was in undergrad and I got these awards from the university, my mom had said something like, Esiako, thank your gods that you got this award, that you are alive. And I'm all, wait, my gods? I thought I was Christian. But I'm Igbo, a first generation Igbo American, Nigerian. So spirituality has been a driving force in my family and my community. And spirituality, in a nutshell, if you think about many different cultures from our past to our future, it's been huge. So I'm very interested about the Black Atlantic. I'm interested about spirituality, and I'm interested in the ways in which Black women, LGBTQ people are invested in spirituality. And I've seen that this is an interesting, I think it's an exciting phenomena of how the ways in which we believe, in which we have faith, and the ways in which we have hope. And to me, that has been a driving and lasting imprint in my life, and what I've seen in others through ethnographic research and talking to folks. So, but thank you for asking that question, because it's a constant reminder that it is some type of me search, but then you see that your me search is dealing with the communities around you, and there's these interlocking spaces that you can see, put yourself in a thread or a tapestry of with other people and other communities. So yeah, so thank you.
Any other questions? Anything that we'd like to add from the back table over here? Who are the experts in this as well? Yes.
So I think that was a really great question, and I think the panelists did a really great job, sort of just letting you know, like, everyone is different, and their motivations are different for why they do what they do. In the social sciences, particularly, well, for myself particularly, I found that I was just curious and interested. The questions that I had started in the work that I was doing prior to entering into graduate school. And I was managing a political campaign. And it was like, I didn't understand why certain things were happening. Why was turnout so low for African Americans, for Latinos? Why weren't they voting? Do they not understand what's at stake? Do they not understand what is happening? Do they not understand why certain groups are getting what they get, like politics being like who gets what and why, and so I was like really intrigued by those questions, and I knew that the only way for me to sort of dig into those questions was to go to graduate school, and getting an opportunity to really sort of dig into questions of politics and political behavior. I wanted to know why people act crazy. Like, why were the politicians the way that they were? Why, how did the rules that we had in our institutions, how did they shape outcomes? Like, I was really like interested in those questions, and then learning like, oh, politics, you see I'm like totally plugging political science, right? But as a political scientist, I was really interested in like, that behaviors of people and institutions and those kinds of things. And then it was like, oh, I can study this. And when we have these conversations about interdisciplinary studies, it's like, oh, you can study education and politics, you can study immigration, you can study race, all of these things. And I'm certain that this holds true for other disciplines as well. Sociology, psychology, you still get to study those topics and interest areas that are at the core of who you, your curiosity and those kinds of things. So I think it varies. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all model in terms of what intrinsically motivates you to do the things that you're interested in doing. You just sort of follow that curiosity that you had. And it was like, wow, my job is to sit in the library and read. I'm such a nerd. Like, this is great. I tell my students, like, can you smell the books? Don't you love, the smell of the library? So like, all of those things are so sort of inform you as a scholar and the things that you get to study. So I just sort of want to impart unto you like the time in graduate school, while it is grueling, while it is it's difficult. You learn so much about yourself. You grow so much as a person. And then you really get to see what moves you and what your passions are. So there's a beautiful thing about graduate school, and much of it you don't see the beauty until after. Until it's over, and then you're like, wow, like it really built character. It really, I didn't know how strong I was, until after that process is over. And then you have this assuredness and this confidence in your ability. So I just want to encourage you guys in that way to know that it's a process, but at the end of it, it's you get to do this wonderful work that informs the world and why and how things move forward in our society and communities.
Thanks. I'd just like to echo that, just talking about sort of the empowerment that you feel after you have gone through a grad degree of any sort. When I first came to Penn, that was not at all on my radar. It wasn't something I had thought about. And because I was surrounded by colleagues where that was really valuable to them and they had done the same thing, I was pushed to do it myself. And I can't explain the difference in my confidence level, compared with before my grad program until after. All of a sudden, I just felt like I knew things, things that I had never really considered important before. All of a sudden, it was just, I felt this new confidence. So that is, I think, a really huge perk to accomplishing what you guys are accomplishing right now, and just academia in general. You're surrounded by peers and colleagues who are just super impressive, and you have conversations that you just don't get anywhere else. So it's just one of those experiences that I think is unmatched in any other setting, but that is definitely one of the perks. And going off of that, how do you feel that you have changed the most since you've been in your program?
Someone else gonna have to do this.
Ooh, okay. Changed the most. That's hard.
You really have not changed.
Oh, I've changed.
Okay.
Trying to decide what to discuss.
Oh, okay. That's the
No,
more reflective.
I don't know. How have I changed the most? That's a difficult question.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
I mean, I guess this is the general sort of thing I was talking about earlier about professionalization. I definitely feel much more of an adult. I feel, I'm much more concerned about, I need a job after this, and thinking about that. Before that, I was very much sort of about ideas, and so I think I've changed more for being professionalized, I guess, is probably the most. Personal life, though, I think I've kept that I've been able to kind of separate that from my academic life, which has been helpful. Maintaining friendships and things like that hasn't really changed much, so that's good.
Well, I know my language has changed a lot. When you read and the type of disciplines that you've been exposed to, for me, it's really cool to be having conversations that are specifically in your field, and then also discussing what you learned to people that are not in your field. So I think what's changed for me, I think I would probably say the type of invested connections that I'm able to make with my colleagues and I have friends from everywhere, from the sciences to the humanities, and the fact that we're able to have these type of multifaceted conversations, and then also trying to find linkages to each of our conversations. I think that's cool. I'm such a people person, so I feel like I've grown exponentially, and the more I learn about my own work is the more I'm able to express and share with others. So I think that's a huge thing for me.
Yeah, I think the same. I mean, I've changed. It's hard to point to the exact ways, and I think, again, it's probably to what the commentator was saying earlier, is one of those things you realize after you finish grad school. It's like, oh, actually, that's what's been happening these last 6 years. I didn't know that while I was doing it. So we're probably at that space. Yeah. So we're almost proving that point by, well, what's happening? And it's like, I don't know. But I mean, certain things I do know is just like the way I view the world, and looking at the connectedness of things that I thought was, separate, and now actually seeing how they link together. I think the way I view the world has changed. I value hard work even more so than I did previously. It's not the case as I thought as an undergrad that, you know, all my professors are geniuses and they were born geniuses. It's like, no, you actually have to put in that work. And when you put in the work, it shows, right? So it's one of those things, you know, 10,000 hours of anything will make you an expert. It really is like the value of hard work does pay off. And I think I know that now, more now than I did previously.
Yeah. And can I just add, because not only were you talking about intellectual changes and development, but your body changes. Like for me, I'm like, oh my God, my hair changed. You know, I've gone through so many hair dyes and so many and balding.
It's happening. It's the stress.
But that does have, that's so real. So, you know, like.
It's real.
It's real.
That's right.
These are things you have to deal with.
So, but I think this is also interesting to see how, like, you know, I came in at 25, now I'm 27, and through the stress, I've gained weight, lost weight, gained weight, and then also I've also matured into my womanhood through this field. So your body is changing, your self is changing, and then when you look back at your pictures from undergrad, you're like, what? I'm like that? Why did I dye my hair purple? No, I was joking. But I think this is also the things that move. When you're moving, your body's moving too, and you're watching this. Really, I feel like this is a psychedelic moment with yourself. Mm-hmm. And what you're able to take, you know, especially like when you're dealing with stress, like how you're able to overcome, like when you have a deadline. Do not procrastinate. No, but you know, you have to deal with that as well. Yeah.
Excellent. And I hope one of the reasons I really like this program is you're hearing from people that are going through it. You know, this is the best resource that you're going to have in terms of what you can expect. So whether you reach out, not to put you guys on the spot, but whether you reach out to them afterwards to ask additional questions, whether you tap into your own alumni network to try to find those mentors, it's going to be really, really valuable and really, really important for you. I liked what was mentioned before. You should really, before you jump into this type of degree, you should make sure that you have some type of plan. Obviously, you know, you should have the passion and you should be interested, and there's going to be days that you just take it one day at a time, maybe 5 minutes at a time. But having that end goal where you know ultimately why you're doing this, I think that, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think that's ultimately what gets you through. You know, to have that that sort of focus for what that end goal might be. Can you speak at all to when you decided to do these degrees? What was your ultimate plan? I mean, what drove you to make this choice?
Okay, I know for me, my family, I spoke about it, you guys know about it, but it's been so huge. My mom came in, my dad came in through an academic scholarship from Nigeria to London and then to Syracuse and got his master's. He couldn't finish it because he had a number of kids and then the green card and all that stuff. And then my mom, she was a domestic worker, and then now she has 2 masters. So one thing you know about Nigerians is that we're like, education is so key, Ezeaku. Get your education. Like it's huge. It's huge. So and then she had to stop. And so this PhD is not like, as some people that say, you know, you should not worry. It's all about the intellectual rigor. But I am standing on top of giants, and I am a person that believes in family and love and support. So they are my driving factor. So I know that when I win, they're winning. And for me, it's the end goal is that when I'm able to become a professor, I'm able to bring more people. And this is not just about Black people, but it's about everyone. You know, so I'm very invested in the lifting as we climb mantra. I'm very interested in about family and building multiple families. You know, it's not just about blood. So for me, this is my driving factor, and that's like the end goal is when I get there, how can I bring other people along with me? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like for me, academia is both personally fulfilling and socially fulfilling. So, you know, personally, I think this is one of the best sort of everyday jobs for my temperament. You know, I get to kind of do what I want to do in a flexible way. And I also get to wrestle with ideas with really smart people who are really engaged all the time. And, you know, it's very different from iBanking. It's very different from being a lawyer. And then socially, it's really helpful and meaningful that I get to wrestle with ideas that I think will actually matter. And I get to talk to policy efforts. I get to write executive reports for the trial court that may change a small way that a judge decides to choose the foreperson of a jury that may have an effect on outcomes for Black and Latino defendants. So that's sort of what keeps me going.
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I think everyone should reach, so first I think everyone should reach out if they think I could help you in any way. I have a mentee that came through this program as well that I still keep in contact with. So if anyone wanted to reach out, you could just email me or tap me on my way out and I'll give you my number. So I'm often driven by some of my mentees and knowing that I am a role model to certain people, being especially being a Black person in philosophy. I think most academic disciplines are persons of color are underrepresented. Philosophy is one of those special cases where it's an extreme case. So knowing that there's a lot of people looking at what I'm doing and seeing whether the discipline is going to be receptive to me and seeing whether I could actually be successful within this discipline keeps me motivated at times where even at that core, the thing Kerwin was talking about, even when that's no longer there, that sort of, well, I'm doing it for me, this me search is no longer there. I'm also driven by these external factors, knowing that, well, there's a lot of people looking at you and there's a lot of people seeing whether this is actually a route that they could take. So I'm often driven by that as well.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just add? I remember again, I'm a living proof of how when I'm walking with other people and other people are watching me. And for those that chose like an interdisciplinary field like Africana studies or feminist studies or even religion, I know that in the beginning my parents were like, what are you going to do with this? Where are you going with this? And then now watching my route, like I have my cousins going, I'm thinking about taking Africana studies courses. I'm thinking about taking feminist studies courses. Can you help me? Can you help me apply to grad school? So I'm like, and then having my dad being so proud, he's like, oh well, Michelle Obama, she has an Africana, I guess she has some type of degree too in Africana studies, like some minor or something like that. But he's like, you're like Michelle Obama. I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm not Michelle Obama, but it's just cool because a little bit. Okay, give myself some credit. But I think it's just really cool to see that when you're driving, when you're invested in your happiness and doing something that feels right and you have a driving goal, other people are watching you and you're pulling people from different marks that haven't maybe considered school or education or a master's, and you're like, yeah, this is great, you can totally do it. So I think that is very helpful too. So when you walk, other people are watching. So just know that.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions out there in the audience? Any final remarks from the back table of any takeaways? I would just like to sort of wrap up by saying, you heard a lot about some of the fears, the struggles, whatnot. The number one thing I would like everyone to take away is remember, if you do decide to go down this, or even if you're if you're not sure, please ask for help. Whether it's career services, whether it's your professors, whether it's, family members, don't forget to ask other people's opinions, other people who have done it before you. It's really easy to get really caught up in your own fears and your own struggles and not reach out to all of the resources on college campuses where you can actually find people that can give you really good advice. So whether it's alum, like I said, whether it's a career services professional, you don't, if you decide to do a PhD route, you don't necessarily have to become a professor. That's obviously one of the more common ones, but you could end up working for the federal government. You could end up working for a think tank, for a nonprofit. You could do research for a healthcare organization. There are a ton of different things that you could do that you might not necessarily even know about or know exists. So make sure that you are reaching out to the administrators on campus that, like I said before, we're here to help you. That's why we come to work every day. That's what we like doing. So make sure that you take advantage of that, especially while you're still an undergrad and on a college campus. I would love to thank our panelists. I think you guys did an excellent job. thank you all too for letting me moderate today. I thought that was a really awesome, awesome program, and I was excited to be a part of it.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Yes, thank you all, our panel, of course. I really appreciate it. And it's brought some tears to my eyes, really, because it's me. You guys have really made an impact on me. This is why we do our work, you know, why I know why I'm involved in this program. And with our little mentor that we've had and the impact. I just sent him a message because that really has been what it's all been about, helping you get to where you want to go. So I hope that this is for all of you, and we're going to take a break. I'm such an old softie for this kind of stuff. I really am. I can't take it. But and then we're going to take a break, and then at 11:30 we're going to start, and we're going to talk about our cluster group and all of our discussions that we've had over the last couple of weeks. So.
When we come back, I think you probably all know what number your cluster was, your digital cluster. So we're going to start with 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you come back, grab your stuff and relocate and find your digital cluster, and then we're going to have some conversation.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. This was funny. You made me so funny. Baldy. Come on. It's okay.
You may, the name Crystal No may be familiar to you. She was the person who directed the digital clusters and wrote to you and had the articles for you to read and the discussion topics. And so when I was planning for this, I asked Crystal if she would maybe do some follow-up for us. And so the first thing we're going to do is introductions. And the way we're going to take 50, we've got it all set out here. But I'm going to read this to you first. Pair up with one person at your table and find out the following information about them. Everyone has a chance to talk. And then once you're done, you're going to introduce the person that you talk to the rest of the table. So you're going to find out their name, their hometown, the college or university they attend and their major, research interests in one sentence, and one thing you've learned this summer. So again, pair up, share information, and then for the whole table, introduce the person you spoke to. And we're going to take 15 minutes. And I've got 11:35 now. Okay? So start.